Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. I'm a journalist, author, interviewer, and documentarian. It's now 23 minutes past 6 p.m. on July the 28th, 2024, and I'm recording this podcast in my home in Dublin City. Less than a half hour ago, I saw on the RTE 601 news that Edna O Brien has died. The news instantly saddened me. The first time I became aware of O'Brien's writings was when I was barely into my teens, and my father, Joe Jackson Sr., a man way ahead of his time, particularly in terms of the times in Ireland, told me that many of the books on our family bookshelf were banned in our homeland. He was most proud of his bodily head copy of Ulysses. But right there beside that, in a position that would have made O'Brien smile, if only because she too loved the writings of James Joyce, and like him had been silenced by our censors, were two of her books, The Country Girls and The Girl with the Green Eyes. Later in my teens, I read both. I have since not just read other books by O'Brien, but even bought an LP of her reading a selection of Irish writings called Some Irish Loving. I remember reading the book of that LP in Paris, indeed, in the room where Oscar Wilde died. I also happen to have been lucky enough to interview Edna O Brien. After it, she wrote me a note thanking me for the Q&A interview and saying she'd chosen to use it in her press kit to publishers. Later in life, however, Edna told me that much of what she said in that interview about Ernst Gebler got her in trouble with her family, a fact that was verified years later again when I interviewed her son Carlo Gebler. But now, Edna has finally been silenced by time, which, in time, gets us all. But before I go, long before I do, I hope, or you, what follows is my tribute to Edna, part of our 1992 interview. Enjoy.
Trying to put the razor blade in. Then actually, they have a problem too.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? If people don't recognize malevolence, well, you'll ask me in a minute about it, but it's something I would like to say.
Sure, definitely.
I can tell within 1 second of reading either a review or a piece about someone the stance of the writer.
Right.
And I can tell from that stance if their whole agenda is just to slice someone up.
Sure.
And I say, bye-bye.
Yeah,
As a reader,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is.
Well, it's turning the subject into an object for the person's own aims. So.
And it's untruth.
Yeah.
I mean, what she was trying to say was that I couldn't write. And I think that was the.
I don't think anyone took that part seriously.
That she and someone could write, that I couldn't. And I thought, boy, I induce a lot of jealousy.
Okay.
I have to have a biscuit on
All
that.
right, you go ahead.
No, do you want cream or coffee? Or cream or sugar?
I'll take a black. That will give me a stronger hit. Okay, so remembering that a lot of our readers are aged between 16 and 35.
Okay.
A lot would have read or would be reading Country Girls still, or would have seen the TV presentation of the film or the film. Okay, they might not realise that Baba was your alter ego. Okay, the split, the bifurcation of the person.
Do you want that thing? Do you want that tape here?
Yeah. Well, no, I want to leave it away from the mic so there's not the humming of the.
Put that behind you. I'll put this on the floor.
Oh, it's a very sensitive machine.
Very what?
You're not going to speak in whispers, are you? It's a very sensitive machine.
Okay.
I paid extra money for sensitive people. It's really. Okay, so were you really the stereotypical father-fearing Catholic good girl? That's a loaded question.
Was I? The stereotype said that I couldn't hear it.
Stereotypical father-fearing Catholic good girl. The other side of Baba.
Oh, totally.
All right, so,
and to a great extent still am.
Yeah.
Yes, I was endowed by God, and then my upbringing filled it with a terrible degree of conscience and conscientiousness.
Right.
About everything, about time, about work, about duty. And combined with that then I had a father who was a quite, he had a temper, shall we say, and a mother who was very judgmental.
Right.
So that, and the church itself and the convent and school teachers, the whole atmosphere was one of thou shalt not, or you will be punished. The whole ethos. It was not just true for my upbringing. It was true for lots of people, but I took it more seriously.
Right.
Because
Right.
I tend to.
Well, I would see you as embodying. I have a class of creative writing class where there are 26 women, 26 people, and 24 women. And to me, you represent the need many women are currently feeling to express themselves in whatever forms they choose, and to escape from the shadow of patriarchy.
Yeah.
I mean, and having those be
To escape the shadows is very important. To escape the shadows, we're all trying, both men and
Right.
women. And I have to tell you, it isn't just patriarchy, it's matriarchy as well.
All right. Did you always identify that fact, or
No,
were you, right.
I've only come to recognize that later.
Okay.
But in the early days, male authority, male rage, male violence, let's not mince the words,
Right.
terrified me,
Right.
and still do.
Right.
I mean, it's there. Nothing ever.
Right. But do you divide the self so severely into masculine and feminine, into male and female, or
No, I think I
not
have
subdivide?
I think I have a strong kind of androgynous quality in me myself.
Right.
But you see, you learn as a child, when you think of it, a child is that size, and that size, and his parents are that size.
Right.
The whole physical, along with moral and everything, what should we call it? Not opposition, but you know what I mean, the setup.
Right.
You are, by nature, as a child, a precarious creature in danger of any minute, being annihilated.
Right. Right.
And I felt that.
You've suggested that you and your dad were chemically ill-suited. It's something you believe in, that there can be chemical
I believe that
clashes.
our friendships and our affiliations and our love affairs and our hate affairs are chemically informed, yeah.
Right. Right.
It's just, you meet someone and within 2 minutes, you don't know their opinions or anything, but they'll be okay to get on with. You meet someone else and the bristles rise.
Right.
I think my father was a deeply restless man, do you see, who didn't realize himself.
Right.
And therefore, and I'm not being condescending, in many ways I feel very sorry for him, because he didn't know what the cause of his unhappiness was.
Right.
He wanted a much more, if you like, glamorous or extrovert life than being a farmer. He wasn't cut out to be a farmer.
Right.
He was cut out for the stage or something, and he was a great storyteller.
Which you inherited. That was the core of
And
your
he
inheritance.
gave me some talent, and so did my mother, and I thank
Right.
them forever. I thank them for
Right.
my genes
Right.
and for disturbing me.
Was it anything like Plath-like tensions between you and your father? Was there anything of an attraction to this darkness too? Or were you repelled by it?
I'm sure there is. Again, I was probably stupider than Sylvia Plath, but I'm not so stupid now. I'm sure that I was drawn to the demonic or the darkness, absolutely. But Sylvia Plath grew up in a much more enlightened, and funny you should mention her, because in some ways I identify with Sylvia Plath. I like her work very much, and I think she was both. Somebody reviewing my book in Newsweek, I tell you this not for bluffing, for boasting, but they compared me with Virginia Woolf and Molly Bloom, which I think is very funny, since one is a fictional character. But they said
Maybe the writer didn't know.
that my writing was beautiful and harsh, like Sylvia Plath, and in
Okay.
that sense. Sylvia Plath, went to university, was educated. I wasn't educated. I don't regret it, by the way. I think university would have tempered some of my own passion and enthusiasm.
Right.
But I didn't I had to educate myself, and therefore I see now aspects of myself in my childhood that I didn't see when I wrote The Country Girls.
Right, okay. But you couldn't, as a child, and probably as an Irish Catholic girl, have identified any attraction to a father. I mean,
no.
these kind of subjects that Plath can write
forget
about.
it.
Somebody.
Oh, forget it. I mean, you'd be put into Our Ladies.
Well, you nearly were anyway, so if you dared to go to that area.
Yes, I think we know in any society that the shadow of incest hangs over us all, and it is the subject about which people, even the most educated or enlightened, are least willing to even discuss.
Right.
Do you know?
Right.
But I know that now, so that I know that the figure of my father, a very tall man in a hat and good looking, definitely impregnated me in some of the kind of men I am attracted to.
Right.
I mean, the physical
Right.
appearance of him
Sure.
as well, more
Right.
than, well, the mental too, someone
Right.
someone to be afraid of.
But do you then have to immediately associate love with self-flagellation or with punishment, with fear,
With self-immolation, you
darkness?
mean?
Yeah, well,
I
if
certainly
he set
did.
that pattern.
I certainly did, but you can change your patterns.
All right, of course, yeah.
You can change your patterns, definitely. Somebody, a doctor, analyst I went to, once said the most wonderful thing to me. He said, there is your first nature and your second nature.
Right.
You can change your second nature. Because a lot of my handicaps are my second nature. My first nature is a much braver
All right.
person.
Before
I'm beginning to
those
sound
shadows.
terribly arrogant,
No,
which
no,
I don't
no.
want.
The first nature means, because I hadn't heard the division
The
before,
first nature
before
means
those shadows
before
were
they
imposed.
fucked you up, as Philip Larkin put it.
Okay, I really don't identify with that. Sorry. Okay, and the Catholicism, in terms of many women and men now are more articulate about the fact that Catholicism divorces them from their sense of their own body, their own sexuality, without the agenda that Catholicism imposes. Was that part of the landscape too?
Oh no, it was all the word divorce, even the word breast. I remember the word breast would send me in. No, the whole thing.
Physical, anything.
Physical and theologic, if we can be so lofty, and moral, was everything was taboo. You know, people say to me, how could you write about, you know, it wasn't like that. I say, okay, kid, wasn't like that for you. I am not exaggerating or inventing my fears and guilt and suffocation about those things. I think a lot of that, though, came from my mother.
Right.
She was a woman of considerable beauty and obviously originality.
Right.
She went to America as a young woman, you know, worked as a maid and then worked her way up to be worked in a shop in Brooklyn and had some airs. Do you know what I mean? She had lovely. I couldn't eat the lunch today. I was too nervous. I know.
I'll have to see you eating biscuits, so you must be
I
relaxed.
have to say I eat biscuits. I normally don't, but today I will. And she had the mantle of my mother hung over me.
Right.
And I think her own upbringing and, you know, her own feelings about sex and the body and everything were very complex and dark.
Right.
And I kind of breathed it in. So there was the Catholic Church, there was the hierarchy,
Right.
and then there was the domestic hierarchy, you know, and
Yeah,
one on
yeah.
top of the other.
But it wasn't just a patriarchy. You now see it was a blending of forces from
It was a
matriarchal
blending of
figure.
forces. There were two different types
Right.
of coercion.
Because many women immediately identified the patriarch and attacked the patriarch then for many years before they identified there were other inputs.
I did at first, but now I know.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's a duo.
Yeah, okay, there's an element from the aspect in the Country Girls too, which is very Irish, so I'm not being racist when I say that, about alcoholism for the father. I mean, was that representative of the home too? True of the home? There are many boys and girls reading our magazine who live in a state of fear induced by drink
I think
patterns in homes.
drink is a bit of, you know, I don't. My poor father is dead. I don't want
All
to
right,
kind
well,
of. I just, you
as
know,
carefully as you can phrase it, just answer
I
the
think
question.
it's no harm to like drink. The trouble with us is we feel guilty about it. The French drink probably as much. A French farmer, probably in Normandy, would drink as much as an Irishman, but he does it in a different way.
Right.
So that the method of drinking, like the man going out of the house to drink to go on a binge, took all the joy away from drink and turned it into another ogre.
Right. Anything that gave pleasure.
Huh?
Apparently. Anything that gave pleasure.
That gave pleasure was sin, instantaneous sin.
And how has that affected your attitude to drink?
I love wine. I love drink.
Do you? But
I
it's
can't drink spirits or anything, and I don't drink like at the lunch today, but in the evening I love a few glasses of wine. I'm not afraid of it.
Were you ever?
Never,
Were you
no.
ever deeply attracted to it in the sense that you might become alcoholic?
I don't think so. I have too much conscience, again,
Right,
and too much... Also, the thing about an alcoholic, and we have to say this, and it's very important, And this truly, I think, is chemical. Some people have two drinks and they're gone.
Sure. Yeah.
I think my poor father had that ill luck. I'm delighted. I'm sure I've had hangovers. Who hasn't? But I haven't had that syndrome. Do you know what I mean?
Right. And you don't. You know the way many writers need these stimulants in inverted commas to write. Be they drugs,
God, no.
be they.
Cup of tea.
You write. Cup of tea is
Cup
now.
of tea. Cup of tea.
Well, you do write, which are many of our readers will obviously identify with in the new book, or have talked about your LSD experience. I mean, how about those as aids to creativity, which is very much a rock and roll myth? All the Bob Dylans and the Leonard Cohens and poets, going back to the Romantics, suggest.
Yes. Well, I wonder how many of them had LSD. I'd say it was more.
The opium, starting with opium.
Yeah, opium is gentler. LSD is no accident. It's called acid. Right. And if you take a pan of acid, and put it on a texture of anything, let alone the poor brain, it scours it. So I went the whole way. Do you know, I was rather
took the pan
ambitious.
in one go.
Exactly. I was ambitious in my folly. But it was a horrendous trip indeed. And I couldn't come back, you know, that thing you couldn't.
For how long was this, hours?
Well, hours and hours and hours, and then flashbacks I got for years.
Really?
It was terrible.
Was it a chastening, sobering, excuse the word, experience though, in relation to drugs? Or no?
Well, it didn't stop me liking white wine or champagne, but I wouldn't take cocaine or anything now.
No.
I might get a trip.
You have still that fear. And in terms of writing, you think of poor Tennessee Williams, who had his kind of network of stimulants before he could even move to the writing desk in the morning.
Yeah, but not LSD. They were uppers and downers
and drink and
coffee. And he was a troubled man. Mind you, I wouldn't call myself trouble-free.
Right, okay. But you've never needed to...
No,
lean
the
on
opposite.
That
I want that brain and mind as clear. I write always immediately after wakening. In the morning, i.e. that is. Doesn't matter whether it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. You know, these people think you get up at 7, which is somehow better.
Sure.
You know, that kind of stupid, narrow thinking. It's like a kind of little...
You're a sybarite, and that's...
But I write as close as possible to my dreaming state, to my unconscious. And that would be ruined by anything except the old cup of tannin.
Right.
God, I'm amazed. Maybe you could, and I don't mean to insult songwriters. I can just hear Van Morrison growling. Maybe you could write.
Growls all the time.
Maybe you could write a song. You know, on a high one, maybe. But a novel is a long journey.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think I have some. You see, I'm very interested in the brain or mind or psyche, shall we call it, of creative people. Because I think there's a little inbuilt drug there that causes one to get into a more heightened state. And a few people have told me that sometimes when I'm writing, for instance, I'm like, I'm shaking. And the telephone would ring or the door, and I'm like that. So that I'm very disturbed, but it's chemical. We keep talking chemical. And therefore I don't need other stuff.
So you live in a heightened state of awareness and sensitivity and openness.
I do actually. I'm afraid I do.
Hi, Joe Jackson here again, and if you want to find out more about that interview or any of my roughly 1,400 interviews, check my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com. I thank you for listening.